Trainer's Channel. And welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. It's a beautiful day. And you know what time it is. It's time for boxing. Look, when I first started this podcast, right, I was encouraged to be successful by none other than Bill Haney, Devin Haney's father, trainer, manager, right? And one of the things that he said to me was, get off into history, right? Bring back the sport of boxing in the historical context, right? People don't really get that much of that, and actually, if you really think about it, that's true. You know what I mean? And I just happened to think back about my past and my experience before I became associated with boxing, right? I remember certain boxers, right, that were out of Oakland, California, my hometown, right? And I kind of like drew from that, contrary to the fact that at that time I wasn't actively involved in fisticuffs boxing, right? But excuse me, I always, for some strange reason, had a connection to boxing. Always found myself contemplating something about boxing. So it was no strange thing to me that I recall one of the cats, one of the champions back in the days, right? In fact, once I started involving myself in boxing, I started running across a litany of cats from the town, from Oakland, California, right, that had boxing backgrounds, right? And let me say this. These cats that I speak of today were damn good boxers, right? I'm talking about from heavyweight to Simi Pascal, which he was in the lightweight division, right? And they were monsters with their hands, right? They didn't get that much recognition based on the fact, solely on the fact that during those times, right, most of us, and this is the case with most of us today as a people, right? We can't seem to find our identity. You know what I mean? We struggle in finding who we really are. Now, there is a legitimate reason for that, right? Because we were basically put in a position, right, that we had to accustom ourselves to an environment that we were unfamiliar with, based on the fact that we were hijacked and brought here from a foreign country. So everything that our forefathers knew, we had no ability to connect with that. So in essence, we ended up having to associate ourselves based on the fact that it was literally thrusted down our throats by society, right? Everything that we know, good or bad, right? We became associated with through a society that felt the need to drag us away from our country and use us in the capacity of you know what. So that being said, let's get to some boxing, right? Because if I stay there, I'm gonna go on and on and on. And you know me, I can get long-winded, especially when it comes to culture, boxing, and politics, right? So I don't want to, interrupt my motion, right? I'm in the motion, right? I'm in the mood to talk about specifically Charlie Shipes. Charlie Shipes, a basic rundown of Charlie Shipes, right? Charlie Shipes was a welterweight, 45 wins, 6 losses, 25 by knockout, right? His career extended from 1960 to 1970. He was a right-hander. He was 5'7" with a 70-inch arm reach. He resided in Oakland, California, right? Now, back in that days, the talk of the town, even as a young person at that time as I was, right, was, I think I mentioned this, Babe's Gym, right? Contrary to the fact that I didn't frequent Babe's Gym at the time because of my association with cats that were actually professional boxers, right? The name Babe's Gym often came up. And I'm almost certain that Charlie Shipes had to frequent that gym. In fact, it was mentioned in some of the paperwork that I read that Charlie Shipes used to go to Babe's gym. But his residence was Oakland, California, but his birthplace was Jackson, Mississippi. Now, a lot of them cats back in the days came up out of the South, right? A lot of these dudes, like Coakley, right? Curtis Coakley, I'm going to get to him in a minute, right? Because he plays a part of this history, right? Curtis Coakley was out of Dallas, Texas. You know what I mean? So most of the cats that got really famous in boxing came primarily out of the South. What's that? The East Coast, specifically Chicago, New York. You know what I mean? So, and I had some cats out of St. Louis. They had a natural ability to box. It was good. Adam Shelton and his brother. You know what I mean? And like, I mean, that may be one of the reasons I was kind of like thrusted into boxing behind Adam Shelton. Adam Shelton had hands. You know what I mean? Contrary to the fact that he was never a professional, but in his upcoming, he used to be in the gym boxing, right? And you know what I'm saying? We were on the street. We were those type of dudes, right? Well, we would sometimes get in the fisticuffs, right? And didn't nobody want to challenge Adam Shelton because Adam Shelton had hands, right? I mean, he had hands, right? And who you think, you know what I mean, wants to get socked up and beat up by Adam Shelton? Nobody, right? So I make mention of that because it is a part of the history that I had to come up around and to get to the point where I had a passion for the sport of boxing, right? So here's another thing about Charlie Shipes. Charlie Shipes, here's another tidbit of history. First of all, let me get to this. Charlie Shipes at one time was the lead trainer of George Foreman, right? George Foreman originally was from, I believe it was, in the South. It was North Carolina, South Carolina, one of those southern states he originated from, but he ended up in Oakland, California. And he lived actually in Hayward, California, which was maybe 10, 15 miles from Oakland, where Babe's gym was, right? And George Foreman used to work out in Babe's gym. Also, Charlie Shipes trained and worked out with Sonny Liston, as is the case with George Foreman. George Foreman was associated back in them days with Sonny Liston. These cats, man, you know what I mean, had a history with boxing compared to none when it came to world-class status. Sonny Liston, we already know, Muhammad Ali, right? George Foreman, we already know, Muhammad Ali, right? You know what I mean? It's a lot of stuff that I didn't have history with back in the day that I now, you know what I'm saying, find myself going through paperwork and coming up with the information necessary to be able to bring it to y'all, right? Okay, he was also George Foreman's lead trainer. Curtis Cokes, whom at the time was number 2 in the world, right? He fought and beat Charlie Shipes by 8-round knockout October 2nd, 1967 in Oakland, California. And Cokes retained his WBA, WBC welterweight championship title, right? These cats, you know what I'm saying, back in the day, that meant a lot to in the 60s, that meant a lot to people that was engaged in the sport of boxing. Shout out to the chat. Joanne Romero, how you doing, sweetie pie? And I appreciate your support. Appreciate you checking in on me, sister. Shout out to the chat. Got shot, boy. Well, oh my God. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, Joanne Romero. This is a good idea for the next, I'm assuming you're talking about the next generation, but that's the ideal to bring about some clarity about the sport, and that it might reach some of those cats in the younger generation that's going in the wrong direction, right? And again, this is what this channel is about. This channel isn't just about boxing; it's about enlightenment also. So let's get back to Charlie Shipes and Curtis Cokes, right? They fought at Oakland Coliseum Arena, right, which was also the home of the Oakland Raiders and the Golden State Warriors, right? Like, it was a lot of. You can take notice of the fact that Oakland produced a lot of stars in the sports, not just boxing, in the sports. Excuse me, in the sport. I got wired up, right? In the sport, right? It's a lot of talent came out of or played in Oakland, California, where I'm from, and I'm proud to say where Bill Haney is from, Devin the Dream Haney. Andre Ward. Andre Ward is a part of that in and around the Bay Area. I'm thinking Andre is actually no. Andre Ward is from the town. Shout out to Andre Ward, right? Andre Ward is a part of Oakland, California, and the litany of scholars, whether it was in boxing, baseball, football, or soccer. Hey, and let me say this. Well, since you drug this out of me, soccer is really big in the town now, right? Soccer is a sport that is probably, from what I understand, I'm told, I haven't done the research on this. They say it has been said that soccer is the biggest sport in sports. It has that much attention now. I know for a certainty that in Oakland, on the newest freeway, they started to build new facilities. I'm saying, like, what the hell is that? Before I knew what it was, it was a soccer. And when I go to Arkansas, there is new facilities that feature soccer. Soccer is a big sport today. So get prepared. If you're not introduced to soccer, you better get prepared to be introduced, because soccer is here to stay, people. But there are a few people that I'm going to start bringing to the table when it comes to historical events, right? Again, I think that's fair for the younger generation that would otherwise spend their time in the streets doing stupid stuff. Hopefully they'll get something out of it if we can get them to a screen and have them to associate themselves with, and not just boxing. Boxing is a good sport to me because I love boxing, right? But there's a lot of sports out there. And let me say this. It's not only about boxing as far as the younger generation is concerned, right? Especially, you know what I'm saying, no harm intended in this. But I make reference to my people because, look, let me give you a short story. And I'm going to get to that. Last night I was watching a movie, right? Don't know the name of it, but it was like 11 o'clock watching this movie, right? And it featured a single mom with 6 kids, and she didn't have a quota. She didn't have no money, right? And she was on the freeway with her, and she ended up somewhere like in Colorado, because it was snowing when they got here, right? Again, she didn't have no money, right? And they was just out of luck. So they got to this town, and they went into this shop. It was a Chinese owner shop, and he had a house not too far from it. But the house wasn't even built, right? It was. I mean, the structure was there, no roof, no interior. It was just a structure, right? So the woman got out of the car and she asked the man, could she buy a house, right? And Chinese are really suspicious people anyway. No disrespect to Lieutenant, but he kind of looked at her strangely, and then they came to some type of amicable solution, and she ended up with the house, right? To make a long story short, they was building on this house, you know what I'm saying, from scratch. They didn't have no money. She went and got a job at the bowling alley, and the man one of the people that she was working for, obviously seduced her and started trying to like on her. But as the movie progressed, he started wanting to control her, right? And he ended up socking her up, busting up her face, and she had a 16-year-old son, right? He was the head of the house, right? And like, he went up there and had a fracas with the man. But the interesting thing was this. At the end of the day, one of the kids, a young boy, he was really good with his hands. So most of the carpentry work and the plumbing work at 10 years old, he was doing it. So he had ran some plumbing into the house because they had an outhouse they were using. This is how old the house was. They had an outhouse they was using. So he successfully ran the toilet from the water system outside into the house. They had a toilet. Quite naturally, he was hella excited, and I would be. Anybody would be, right? So he went outside, got some gas, poured it on the outhouse, and the outhouse caught a flame. But the top of the house was built with sheets. It was built with sheets. I mean, it was. They started from scratch. This is an amazing story, really, right? The house caught a flame, burnt down, right? So I think that's the end of the story. There's a message. There's a message in this for my people. There's a message in this, right? So the house burned down. The next day or the day after, a lot of people drove up in their cars and their trucks. The minister or the priest came with toolboxes and tools and materials, and they built those people a house for free. For free. See, that to me is one of the most beautiful things when it comes to the culture of different people. Well, white people look out for one another. The Mexican people look out for one another. The Chinese look out for one another. The black people look out for nobody. You know what I mean? I just wanted to share that with y'all because the story is an enlightening instrument for my people that don't have enough sense to understand the nature of unity. You can't get nothing done by yourself. People that get a few dollars, right, and don't have the mental state to help somebody else, that's a sad thing to me. Do I help people? Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's what God put us, one of the things that God put us here for. Not just because of the color of our skin, but to help one another and to love one another. Do we do that? Hell no. Especially my people. You know what I mean? But there is a method to the madness as far as my people are concerned. And I said this, I'm going to say it again, right? Everything that we know, we was learned from somebody else, the good and the bad, right? So we have to basically relearn ourselves, re-educate ourselves to know how to act and respond to human nature, right? Now, I just had to get that off my chest because that movie was enlightening to the point where I hope it made a point to those of like-minded that don't help one another. You want for your brother and sister what you want for yourself. That's what I do, and I don't care what color the person is. He can be brown. It doesn't matter. He can still be my brother or my sister. Me. That's me. That's how I was brought up. You know what I mean? So I hope there was a lesson in this that should hit what I said today. You know what I mean? And let me say this. We are going to do more history. We're going to do more history. You know what I mean? It's just not about the ins and outs of boxing. It's about the historical events of this world and the direction that this world is going that direction that this world is going in